Okay. Well, this is what we're up to. We were looking at the present and we were saying that things just exist in me. That's about it. Well, the future. Everyone thinks the future constantly arrives. We looked at the pictures of the lotto thing, we looked at the coffin, it all seems very obvious that the future keeps happening.
I'm hoping for the Euro millions to arrive. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a discussion about Euro millions. They will arrive, relax. It's being planned. So here's the future.
Like the dog.
If you go to your local park and you want to see the future arrive, if you say the future arrives, if you go to the local park and you want to see the future arrive, all you will actually see is things happening constantly. It'll just change. It'll get dark, it'll get light, people will run around, everything will just keep happening. And things only happen if there's energy in them. There's energy in the dog, energy in the squirrel. I should put a picture of a dead squirrel there. Energy in people, energy in the clouds, whatever. So things move and change, but they move and change if there's energy there for them to move and change. And there's a meditation that you can do where you get an object and you put it on the table and you look at it, and then you move it and you look at it again, and then you move it back and you look at it again, and you move it back and you look at it again. And you just keep doing that about 1,000 times. When you do it, you kind of get the message, oh my God, things just move. They're here and they move, and that's it. It's a very weird thing to do, but whatever. Where anything is happening, energy is flowing or being released. So we might get a candle, we might say this candle will burn for 4 hours, but what we're really talking about is how much fuel is in the candle. All that happens is that the fuel comes out of the candle, right? That is the factor that makes it burn. That's, bigger the candle, longer it will burn. This car will go down the drag strip only if there's fuel in the tank. If there's no fuel in the tank, it will not go down the drag strip in the future. Because there is no future, things just move if they've got energy and energy is being released. You can get a balloon. If you get a balloon and you don't blow it up and you let it go, it'll just fall to the ground. But if you get a balloon and you do blow it up and you let it go, it might fly off in a very random, chaotic pattern, a pattern that we would call unpredictable. It might fly off in a very smooth, straightforward kind of pattern if it was one of those long balloons. Or it might burst. And in each of these cases, the energy that you've put into the balloon is released. And it's released either smoothly or chaotically or rapidly. So the bang that you hear from the balloon is in the balloon. It's just silent until you put a pin in there. The energy is in there. You put the bang in the balloon when you blow into it, and it's sitting there. The bang isn't the thing that happens in the future. The bang is the thing that happens.
You say, patience, children, I'm just banging the balloon.
Yes. So, the question is, this is the key question, because we chat to a few people over the break, and people saying, do you think time is this, do you think time is that? People saying this about time, and I'm saying nothing about time. What I'm saying is, if objects in the world could just exist and move and interact, would that explain everything that we observe? And if it does, you don't have to even start this question about this time thing. That's what I'm kind of saying. Would this explain everything that we attribute to the future? And I'm saying yes, it would, because if the car's got fuel in it, it'll move. If the balloon's got air in it, it'll pop. If things could just exist and move and interact, and you go down the park, everything you see will be explained. You may interpret it as the future arriving, but if things could just exist, move and interact, it would also look the same. So seeing things change is not proof that the future constantly arrives. Any questions? So hopefully what I've shown you by this point is that we think the past exists, but that's just our memories. We made the X on a piece of paper, but that's just moving stuff around. We think things take time to move, but that's just comparing the speed of two things that are moving. And we think that the future arrives, but again, that's just looking at things moving. So it started off seeming to be cast iron proof that there's a past and a present and a future, and that they're very distinct things, but when you break it down, things just existing and moving would explain all of that. And the point is that our Einstein and Stephen Hawking and Isaac Newton and people like that think that time exists, they think it's real, they think you can travel through it in theory. Mathematically, they will tell you that people have already travelled into the future by a few milliseconds. We'll address that later. Break time. This is where we were meant to be up to when we had the break, so don't get your hopes up.
I said that second half was really quick.
Part 2. Bridging the past, present and future. Why we can see the past and not the future. Aging, no temporal order of events. A lot of the books that I read started off by saying things like, we can see the past but not the future, blah blah blah, this is a proof of time. We all get older. No child is older than their parents. This is a proof of time. Sorry. Einstein says there's a temporal order to events. This is his proof of time. So now I'm going to break these down and disprove them, hopefully. Bridging the past, the present, and the future. This is called a thought experiment. Einstein did a lot of thought experiments where you just let the imagination run riot. You don't have to build any equipment. You just ask a question in your head, and it can sometimes be very revealing. Most of his relativity was based on thought experiments. You get a design for a bridge. You get 3 students. And you send them into a room, each with a design of the bridge and some instructions, and they go into these rooms A, B and C. But after a while they come out, and student A comes out and says, you should not build this bridge, the bridge that you're planning to build, because it's got a design flaw and it'll collapse. The next student comes out and says, the reason this bridge collapsed 50 years ago, according to the papers that I've been given, is because it's got a design flaw, and that's why it collapsed. The other student comes out and says, you've got to stop people using that bridge now because it's got a design flaw and it'll collapse. You've got to phone them up, get them off that bridge. Now the thing is that all 3 of these people did the same thing. They looked at the design, they had some instructions, but one of them thought that they were thinking about the past, and one of them thought they were thinking about the future, and one of them thought that they were thinking about the present, but all of them were doing the same thing. They were just sitting somewhere thinking now. So just because we can think that we're thinking about the future, it is not a proof that the future arrives. You're just doing it now. Why we can see the past but not the future. Before and after, ahead and behind. Imagine you're on a boat ferry and you're going from Dover to Calais. So you remember what you did in Dover, that's all in the past, and you're wondering what you're going to do in Calais. And that seems to be kind of obvious. Oh, we're going to be in Calais in an hour, I wonder what it'll be like. Will it be rainy, blah, blah, blah. Oh, we had a great meal in Dover, that's all over. It's all over in Dover. But in fact, Dover is just behind you, and everything that's happening in Dover is still happening in Dover. It just affects you less and less the further you go away from it. They have some radiation.
No, I think the pub shut when we left.
So whatever's happening in Dover keeps happening, but we're heading away from it. We don't care about it so much. Whatever's happening in Calais is always happening, but we're heading towards it. Now as we get there, it will be changing. It's constantly changing, but Dover's changing as well. So what I'm saying is that the future is really we tend to see whatever we're heading towards as being the future. But wherever we're heading, everything's just happening there now. Might not be the clearest thing, which I did ages ago. So one of the
changes
books,
when you get there though.
sorry?
It all changes.
It's all constantly changing. One of the books I read, it said, time exists because we can see the past and not the future. What I'm trying to explain to you is this, right? When we think that we're looking at the past, if I ask you, Tim, for example, what's the name of the first school that you went to, right? You might give me an answer that is referring to the past, or probably some kind of a witty, snidey remark, probably. That's my money. So what was the name of the first school that you went to?
It was Crossley Street.
Crossley Street, okay.
Yes.
It doesn't sound like a school. It sounds like
And when you access that
It was
information,
the name of the road it was on. Crossley Street School. It's still
and when
there.
you access that information, you actually looked in your mind and you got a memory relating to that place, that school. So when we think, if I put it forward, when we think that we're talking about the past, what we're really doing is talking about the contents of our heads. And we're saying, yes, but that's the past, that's what it means, that's what it relates to. And what I'm saying is, does it really? If you have a map, there's usually some territory that goes with the map. But at a certain point, you have to ask people to actually see the territory. And what I'm saying is, does the past really exist, or does the past not exist?
Well, it did exist.
no, but it doesn't now.
Right, but it did exist, it was once the present.
The question is,
Does it exist
if
now?
things could move and change, would that explain why you were able to give me that answer? And the answer is yes. If things can move and change, you can have that answer in your head.
Yeah.
Saying the name of that school doesn't prove that there's also a record of those events in the past that maybe we could visit the machine. That's the question. If, as I move around here, is there another record being created of this movement or not?
No.
That permanently exists.
Yes, in the
Somewhere.
past, somewhere,
Yeah,
in
no.
some way, in some dimension.
No.
This thing called time. But thank you.
But your Einstein experiment tells you that theoretically it's possible.
Yes,
so
I'll break that
with
down,
greater
yes.
speeds and other things,
The problem is that Einstein went in assuming that time exists. So Einstein's all about the temporal order, we'll get onto that in a second. So what I'm saying is this guy here, he thinks he knows what's happened in the past, but he doesn't know what's going to happen in the future. In reality, this is a cartoon, you see, he thinks he's clever because he's got a big monster, but this one's got a big monster, so that was quite funny.
Did you draw that?
Yes.
Where's the talent?
Yeah, I know, wasted. Talking about time, I should be an
The
artist.
big one is modelled on Matthew.
That's the language, isn't it?
I'm sure it's just a perspective thing, and the one in the background
Yeah,
is actually
the other
bigger.
way.
That cow is
Okay.
really close.
You're right, it does
That
look, it's
one
not
is far
obvious,
away.
I will Photoshop that later. So, attention please, guys. So this is my point, okay? Why can we see the past but not the future? Very important thing. This is an essence of the proof of time, I'm saying it's wrong. This guy might think he's thinking about the past, but he's just looking at the contents of his head. The reason he can't see around the corner is because he can't see around the corner. That's it. There's no past, there's no future, there's just what we can see and what we can't see. Aging. All the books that I buy about time, I read.
But that
Yeah,
fellow
sure.
doing the face down the side, he's basing his present action on what he knows will happen in the future. He needs the future in order to be able to act that present.
Okay, I'll go back on this guy here.
No. The one who's pulling the face or
The shorter
going,
one.
the short one
Yeah.
is obviously doing that in the present. But the only reason he's able to do that is because he knows in the future he's got his friend around the corner. I mean, isn't his action
He's
is
trying
he's
to
got-
make something
no,
happen in the future.
he's got-
Well, it's based on he has the security of knowing
He's
he
got,
has that.
Yes.
he's got that now. But you are assuming that that isn't a cardboard cutout.
Okay, he's got it now. I never thought of it.
No. If assuming this is real, this is obviously a silly picture, but so you're saying that he thinks something's going to happen in the future, he's confident because he's got his buddy there,
Well,
so he's
because he-
worked out a future thing.
Yes,
Okay.
makes sense. There's a plan.
Yes, there's a plan. And this is what I'm saying about the bridge. You get those three people, and one of them, they're all doing the same thing. They're looking at a plan, they're looking at some instructions, but one of them thinks that he's thinking about the past.
But no, but that's based on the different information. One of them you said
Yes.
one of them was told that the design was 50 years
Yeah.
old. I mean, that illusion is based on physical information that they've been given about the nature.
But all they're really doing is they're sitting in the room looking at squiggles.
Sure, it depends how you look at it. Yeah.
And they think different things. One of them thinks, oh, I can't change this thing because it's happened. One of them thinks that I can stop it because it hasn't happened. But really, everything just exists. I haven't answered your question very well. So you're saying he thinks he knows how things
That's
will
right
change.
now.
What you said was quite interesting though. I was saying the fella acting as he is can only act as he is because he has a knowledge, he has a plan, he has
Yeah.
some idea of the future,
Sure.
no doubt.
He's got some idea of how he
That
thinks.
construct helps
Oh,
helps
the
him
construct,
act.
yeah.
You actually say he knows he's got him there now.
Yeah.
And that's right, that is also true.
Yeah.
Yes. And the
That's
real
just now. You can't tell. That guy has a big laser thing in his pocket. You know, I mean, it's
he
just
can
now.
tell that, yeah.
But they're all kind of
You
acting
can
on
make your
assumptions
own
about the future.
outcomes.
They are. They're acting on how they think things
It's gonna
will
turn out.
change or how they are going to change. You can draw a graph of, say, the projectile,
You
the
could do a
path
risk
of the ball,
analysis.
and you can carry on that line. Yes, but what I'm saying is,
There's a lot of that going on at the moment.
all of that thinking that he's doing doesn't prove that there's a future that we could travel into or that constantly arrives. It just proves that he's there and he can think
Right, okay,
something,
something
and he can think something, and they can have an agreement, and they can hope things will change a certain way.
But who's peddling the idea that there is a predestined future? Because that's not something that you.
Stephen Hawking, the most successful
Right, you haven't
mathematician.
told me that.
Okay,
You've got to show me up the basis.
This is the stuff that I haven't been as
Yeah.
is that basically your top scientists, if you went to chat to someone like people who run the Large Hadron Collider, or you go to NASA, everything will be run by time. And I'm not even saying don't use the idea; it's a perfectly legitimate, very useful idea. But I'm saying you have to understand.
I personally think it's a bit anal.
Go to NASA and say, "Things a bit anal, that big rocket you made, right?"
I've got a great place.
Aging. Let's look at the aging thing. But thanks for your comment. I will try and change it.
Hi, over two.
Hi, right. Every book I get, I tend to look for the first mention of time, every book about time, and see whether or not I can prove or disprove what they're saying. Because if I read a book that asks me a question I can't answer, then all of this work is ended. but it takes one tiny flaw to stop it all. I'm saying it's black and white. I'm saying this time does not exist. I'm not saying maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, or it's a kind of grey area. I'm saying I'm sure it doesn't in any way, shape or form.
But get that from you.
Others, no. Okay. So here we go. The Asian controversy, how is it wrong? No child can be older than its own parent.
Well, that's obviously flawed, isn't it?
Why?
God,
Genetic things going on.
So obviously that was sarcasm.
yes, well spotted.
Tim, you've fallen into my second trap.
Good, excellent. I thought I had.
So this is the point, this is what I'm saying. I'm telling you I'm saying time doesn't exist, but when you read something like this, it seems so obviously correct. Does that seem obviously correct to you? No child can be older than its own parent. Would you agree with that, Joe?
I'm not.
Okay. Because it's very easy for us to say, well, no, of course time doesn't exist. This is what I was trying to point out at the beginning. That
You point out one child that's older than its parent, then, Matt. Go on.
I shall do that.
Go on then.
All right.
Right.
Anyway, we should put some money on this, but you'll never accept the
No,
argument anyway.
go on then.
All right, I shall explain this point.
All right, I'm listening.
But what's important is that you realise at this stage that you're very doubtful of it, that it can be shown.
Just answer the question, Matt.
Well, you see, if I just
show me
ask
one
the
example of
question,
a
you haven't
child
got an
that's older than
investment
its parent.
in the argument. This is the yeah but no but yeah. You can, oh yeah, no, I didn't mean that. Okay, well, go on. I don't mind. So, let's have a look here. A parent and his younger child. It's familiar to you. It's a septo, some walks in the middle. I don't know who that bloke is back there, but he loves it.
I'm glad Lisa left because she wouldn't have a clue who they were.
But it's actually not that important. What's important is that the person looks older than that person. Alright?
Okay.
What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you a chain of reasoning, a bit of logical thinking. You said I was pedantic earlier, and the truth is, yes, I can be ruthlessly pedantic to the nth degree, because sometimes it's useful or important to work out how the world is. So this is that kind of reasoning, okay? 3 random buckets of water from a beach. Which sample, Tim, would you say is oldest? Sample A, which is from the kind of the west or southwest, if you call it that. Sample B, which is from the northwest, or sample C, which is more from the east. So you go out to a beach, you get some buckets, you take those samples of water. Which would you say is?
I have no idea.
Okay.
It's all
Depends where
dinosaur
the
pig.
beach is.
Sorry?
Depends where the beach is.
Yeah, maybe, but remember this stuff's always moving, so it's constantly being churned up.
But having been a surfer, it does.
Okay. Let's imagine that this bucket of water here was older than the water here.
Why are we asking the question?
Why am I?
Yeah.
The reason I'm asking this question is because
It's trying to prove that a child is older than its parent.
But why are we applying this question into why would we even ask this question of water? Why is it this? I don't get it.
exactly
Because he's needed.
we're looking at whether a child can be older than their
Right.
parent. Okay, and this is the reason. It's a very good question. This is the reason. I'll tell you a story.
Oh.
I was listening to the radio, and it was about a woman who had anorexia, but she was cured of anorexia. And the way she was cured was very odd, because she was in the changing room trying on some clothes, and she was very skinny. She got out of the changing room to go to the mirror down the hall. And as she went down there, someone was blocking her way, so she couldn't use the mirror. So she moved to the left, but you know, sometimes you move to the left and someone else moves to the left. So they moved to the left.
No dancing.
Right? And this person who was blocking the way was really skinny, like skinnier than her. But when she moved to the right, the other person moved right, and she moved to the left again, and then she saw it was a mirror. At the beginning, she saw this incredibly skinny person that she felt sick and sorry for, who'd really made a mistake. And it was only because she hadn't realised she was looking at herself that all that went through her filters. Normally you would filter stuff out. So sometimes you have to actually trick people for them to see the reality.
Right.
But that's the very common therapy with anorexias.
Yes.
Not that I suffer from this, obviously.
Perfectly well, kid. So here's the point. This is the point. I'm just asking this question. You know, don't worry about the question. Which bucket of water is older? Is the seawater here constantly older than the seawater here? Surely it's all churning up together. You know, if you got these buckets of water, you took them to a lab and you said which one's older, they go, what do you mean? You know, it's all the sea. It's all churning up. Okay? Does that make sense? Would you agree with that, Tim? It doesn't really make sense. You know, surely it's all the sea and it's all churning up.
Surely.
Like that. Surely.
Don't bring humour into it.
Get rid of the pointer.
I don't know what drove you to have this 3 random buckets. So,
Exactly, that's what you're meant to be asking. And there's a reason for it, which will be revealed. You know, if someone said, I'm now going to show you a magic trick, and the way it works is there's a hidden trapdoor here, and when I pull this lever, you'll think, and then they show you the trick, you'd go, it's obvious.
Why didn't you have 3 children standing there, Matt, of 3 different ages, and say which
It's
one
they're
was the
drowned
oldest?
in, you can't do that to children. Why didn't I have 3 children? How would that affect what I point out in the next slide?
I have no idea
What
what
exactly
the slide is.
There's a reason for this, okay, and like I say, I'm trying to trick your
You
filters.
should probably try and get to the reason a little bit quicker.
Yeah, you know what it is? It's talking to people who are asking me questions that slows the whole process down.
Okay.
Moving on. It's a simple question. So we're
See, I've
basically,
slowed it down so much that it's
you slowed me down now telling me, Gary, you slowed me down. Now Tim slowed me down a lot. Anyway, so here we go.
Everybody
A, B,
quiet,
C.
listen.
The buckets of water. It's kind of silly to ask which is oldest, which is youngest. They're just random samples of water. It all gets churned up constantly, okay? Now, which of these areas of matter is actually oldest? This wave has obviously travelled from over here, it's hit the beach and it's about to be destroyed on the beach. This wave is on the way. This is a brand new wave that's heading there. So this wave has existed for longer. This must be an older wave. Yeah, if you
Are you talking
feel.
about wave or water?
Well, good question.
It's just going to get sucked by.
Which of these waves is older? Would you say that this wave, assuming they all just started here and travelled across, this
Also
wave,
assuming they all start at the same place.
it doesn't really matter exactly where they start,
Okay.
roughly. What we're
So
saying
number
is,
3 has just started like a centimetre before then.
unlikely.
Unlikely.
I've got the
It's only-
video, I'll email you the video.
Only 3 is only older because number 2 is behind it.
Yes, and number 1's behind that, yeah? So we would say that this wave has existed for longer.
Well, it doesn't matter, does it? It's only because you've numbered them.
Not all waves start at the same place either, I'm sorry.
Exactly.
On average, in general.
Exactly.
No,
Right,
you
you want
know.
us to say yes?
Waves closest to the beach are the oldest.
Yeah,
That
in
makes
simple
sense.
terms, if we had we could create a water tank where we made waves that started in a very accurate and similar way, okay, and then the discrepancy wouldn't be wouldn't be awkward, like some of the people in this room. So I'm suggesting, assuming that this wave doesn't go along 10 feet and then for no fucking reason at all suddenly stop and disappear, which I've never seen them do, but they do
They
that.
do that all the time.
Alright, they do. So this way, let's assume that one travels there and takes it 30 seconds, whatever. We could say this one's 30 seconds old, this one's 15 seconds old, this one's the start where it's 15 seconds old, whatever. So I'm suggesting that we would generally think that this wave is older. This wave has been in existence for longer. If you pointed a camera at it, you'd have more film of it. That's what I'm suggesting. Now, at best, all matter is basically the same age, whatever it happens to be doing. So what I'm saying is, we look at this wave here and we say that is older. Well, we already got the 3 buckets of water. We already agreed that none of that water is older or younger.
Yeah, but there's a difference between water and a wave.
Yeah, the shape. What it's doing.
Well, no, because a wave is created from water, and you're saying 3 buckets of water, not 3 buckets of a wave. That's 2 completely different
Yes.
things.
Talking about water.
Yes, but the unit of measurement in the next one is whatever you call it, a matter, a matter amount or whatever. It's something to do with the way the energy and the motion wraps up with the thing. That's what we're looking at.
Yes.
It's not pure water.
So what we're ending up here with is this idea that if this is a wave, it's older water,
No,
or
just
it's
saying
been
an
doing
older
something longer.
The wave
Some
has
other
been in
water.
existence that wave has been in existence longer than other waves.
Yes.
There's nothing else to compare them to.
Yes. Okay.
And that's completely irrelevant to the 3 buckets of water.
So here's the question, right? If we were to say, looking at, say, this bucket of water here, and we were to compare it to this wave here, the thing is, this bucket of water, or any flat area here, it's just water doing something. This is just water doing something, this is just water doing something.
But it's the doing that you're measuring in the other thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
You're measuring the doing, not the water. Yeah.
Yeah, and what I'm
You
saying,
could measure that there's no difference.
you see, this is doing something
There's
here.
no age, there's
just doesn't look interesting to us.
We're trying to look at the age of things, and there's no difference in the age, but there is a difference in the action.
You see, if as this wave starts,
It's not any older.
the water around here
It's just
might be
moving.
swirling.
So you're saying the matter is all the same age, effectively. It's all the same stuff, but depending on what formation, certain formations of it can be measured over time.
No, what I'm saying is that
Sorry.
this matter here that's in a certain formation is matter in a certain formation, as is this matter here. Now, none of them started, this didn't start being something as they laid the floor. It was just something. So what I'm saying is that this is just water doing something, and this is just water doing something. Now you and I, our eyes might be drawn to this bit, but that doesn't mean anything. This is just water swirling around. This is just water swirling around. It never starts.
So forgive me, if I'm understanding this, what you're saying is that we're all the same stuff, right?
Yeah.
Wherever we come from, it's all out the earth and it's in a rock somewhere. And then, so that's the same age within certain boundaries.
Yeah.
But then you're saying what we make it into is then how we then identify it. It's what it is. I've lost my own point.
Oh, right. No, that's how this works. So I'll bring it to the conclusion, and then we'll listen to Tom's.
You're saying what Steptoe and his son are made of is the same stuff.
We haven't got there yet.
Yeah. At best, all matter is basically the same age, whatever it happens to be doing. So we can look at a rock that's over here. Now this wave starts to be formed. Well, at the moment that wave starts to be formed, that rock is doing something. Yeah, you could get a rock and a stopwatch and go, oh look, I've looked at it, not changed much for 2 minutes. Yeah, it's doing something. There's no start point. Everything. You have to ask that question. If things could just exist and move and change, would that explain what we see?
So Matt, if things just exist and move and change, the unborn child,
Yeah.
right, that doesn't exist before you have sex and conceive a baby, it exists, it moves and it changes. What is it then?
It's a good question. If you imagine you had something like a spaceship with a couple in there on a long journey, and they've watched all the DVDs and they've looked out the window and they like the look of each other, and they end up shagging, all right? This is just a ship going along long distance. So they end up shagging, and then they have a kid or a few kids. And then the parents die, but the kids are still in the ship and they're eating all the food. It lands automatically. We open the door, we chat to these children. And the question is, who are you chatting to? What is it that you're chatting to? And the answer is you must be chatting to the food that's in the storeroom. Life has been passed on into it or through it. All of the stuff, if any of us here have a child in 10 years, all of the stuff that makes that child up, all of the energy, all of the matter, all of the laws of physics exist. They're just not in the shape of a child.
No, I'm sorry. There's a big difference between a tin of sardines and a life.
Yeah, I agree. No, it's incredible.
Yeah,
right?
we
It's
met
incredible
people,
that, that life comes into a thing. I mean, consider this, right? When you were born, what did you weigh? 3 stone, 4 stone? When you were born, Tim, what did you
He's a
weigh?
comedian.
What did you weigh? Like a couple of pounds, whatever, yeah?
Well, hopefully a bit more than that.
And we all know that thing that clearly the vast majority of the stuff you're made up now of, you ate. I ate this hand. There's no way this can possibly be here unless it went through my mouth, which is bizarre and incredible, but that's the way it is.
Huh?
Well, where do you think this came from? I didn't get it stuck on during the sleep.
You ate your hand.
Yeah, I had to eat the
You had to
food
eat.
that became my hand.
To
The only way this can
you
be
did. Your mother did.
one way or another. No,
and
what I
then-
mean is as an adult now.
Yeah, but that's the.
Look,
then your mother before you.
let's say I weigh 12.5 stone, but when I was a kid I weighed half a stone. There's obviously 12 stone of matter that I've added to myself. And I've only done that by eating food.
It's all
But you
about
haven't necessarily eaten
changing.
12 stone of matter. Yes, I mean.
Oh, yeah.
Way more.
Sure.
So here's my
To get
point.
a quality of being like that.
Here's my point. Consider this possibility. Consider the possibility that all the matter exists. It's all doing something constantly. When it reaches an interesting shape, we become more interested in it. But it's still doing something. If it's in a boring or disinteresting shape or an inert shape. So the idea that this stuff is older than this stuff is not actually legitimate. When we start off saying it's obvious time exists, no child is older than a parent, I'm saying it's not actually that obvious. There may be a point, and maybe I'm wrong at this point, and maybe I'll have to look at it more, but I'm saying it's not that clear cut, it's not that obvious. The idea that this stuff wasn't doing anything until this stuff shagged its mum is bizarre. It was obviously stuff, it was doing something somewhere.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Because
So we
there was
start
only
off, and
a
this is a
certain
bit like the
amount of
miles
stuff.
per hour. It seems obvious that we need time to move until we go, alright, we just see two
Yeah.
things.
There is actually,
It's
so
also
there is-
well known that none of us are actually the same person we were 11 years ago. Because 11 years, every single atom in your body
Right.
is exchanged for another one.
Correct.
And it's a
So
bit like
it takes that
lighting a
long.
candle from a candle, you pass the flame on.
Yeah, you're not
Yeah.
the same person you were.
It all
You have a
constantly
scar,
changes.
even like a scar on my chin. It's like it's just a reference to information that's been laid down in your blueprint.
So that
So-
isn't the same bit of flesh
No,
on the chin
not-
than it was 11 years
Absolutely
ago.
not at
Just
all. No.
remembered.
It's a bit like, you know, if
Yeah.
you get
You're the same
a
person you were 11 years
motorway,
ago.
not a pile up, but a bunch up on the motorway, you get this bunch up that forms, and what can actually happen is the cars keep driving on, and eventually all the cars, the original cars, are gone, but there's still
There's
this
still-
bunch up. It's a bit, I got on an escalator one time, and it was just rigid with people all the way up the left-hand side. I was really annoyed because there's a bloke at the front, at the top, blocking it. And when I got to the top, behind me, it was me. Do you know what I mean? It was like I was forced to make the thing happen. So anyone else coming would have seen the same rigid pattern, but it was a constant changing stuff. So I'm just saying it's not that clear cut. This stuff and that stuff are the same age, and this stuff and that stuff are always doing stuff. We're just always doing things. Let's move on. Temporal order. There seems to be a temporal order. You can't build the roof of a house before you build the walls, or you can, but it wouldn't stay up, it would fall down. This is Einstein's relativity, which is an absolutely brilliant book. He explains it so well. Amazing guy, really amazing guy. But someone said to Einstein, yeah, where'd you get all your brilliant ideas from? And he said, I've only had one. That was it, apparently. There's many good things. Theory of relativity is intimately connected with the theory of space and time. The reason I'm looking at this is because I looked for the first reference to time in a book, and I asked for their proof. What is your proof? Well, you just rushed in and assumed it exists, like the Dromlo kind of argument. I shall therefore begin with a brief investigation of the origin of our ideas of space and time. The experiences of an individual appear to be arranged in a series of events. In this series, the single events which we remember appear to be ordered according to the criterion of earlier and later, which cannot be analysed further. Well, let's have a look, shall we? So we remember arriving here, then getting a drink, then going out, then coming back. There seems to be a temporal order to events, and that seems very obvious. Can I get out of this one? No temporal order. Imagine your video in a football game. Guy takes a shot. Does it go in? Yes, it's a goal. All right, and your video get on a video recorder. If your video recorder is on and it works, then there is a recorded sequence of events. You could go to a magazine, you could sell them the individual frames. You could say, I've got this series of goals, this brilliant goal, you've got to see it. And they go, oh, right, we'll buy these pictures off you, blah, blah, blah. Excellent. But if the camera has a fault and there isn't a recorded sequence of events, then there isn't a recorded sequence of events. You could have a camera with a weird fault where it just constantly recorded the present frame and then deleted it. That was just constant, like when you turn on your camera but you're not taking a picture. You can move it around and it shows you everything that's around, but it's not recording. Now if you had a camera like that, and you went to the magazine and you said, no, you should see the way you lined up the shot. The guy would go, great, I'll give you £1,000 for the picture. Where is it? I haven't got it. If you've got it, you've got it, and if you haven't, you haven't. If it exists, it exists. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So if there isn't a recorded sequence, then there isn't a recorded sequence. Let's look at it in the 3D world instead of a simple camera frame, all right? If there is a sequence created and recorded in time, Stephen Hawking says you can go and visit the past or the future. Remember those slides at the beginning? That's what he's saying. He's saying the past and future exists.
Well, he's saying it's theoretically possible. He's not
Yeah,
saying
theoretically
you can do
possible. Yeah, and then that's a good point because it only has to be theoretically possible, and that's a proof that they kind of exist. And I'm saying no, absolutely not. They don't exist now as we're walking around it. If there is a sequence created and recorded in time, then there is a sequence, and it's got a flow. It's got a direction. These things happen in order. I'm not denying that things happen and that they have happened, And if there is a recorded sequence, that's great, because we can have a direction and we can have an order. But if there isn't a sequence that's created and recorded, then there isn't. Now you have to at this point just ask that question. You might think, oh, but there is. I'm not asking you whether you think there isn't. I'm asking you to consider. If there isn't a sequence, then there isn't a sequence. We agreed that when we looked at the film. And if there isn't a sequence, then there is just the present in which things move and change, which is what we constantly observe. That's what we see. And this is the moment where you kind of step out and you go, yeah, but I'm convinced there's a past. You go, yeah, I know, you're looking at the contents of your head, and it makes sense, and I agree that it makes sense, and it's very useful. I use it myself, I always will use it. But I'm saying, is there a past that's created? And if there isn't, there isn't. If there is, there is. But if there isn't, then there's no direction. And there's no sequence, and there's no order. It's not actually created. And I'm asking you now to think, is it created or not created? It's not created, it's not created. If there isn't a sequence created and recorded, then there isn't a past. We got the idea of one, that's great, I'll use it, but it isn't really there. We got the idea of money, that's great, I'll use it, but it doesn't really exist. There's no reason to then suspect that a future exists. We just see things moving and changing in the past. There's no direction or order, there's no flow of a thing called time. The only flow happens when you put petrol in your car and it flows to the engine and the car flows down the road. Things happen all over the world, but only if they've got energy within them, not because there's also another thing called time. There's only the constantly changing present. You have to consider that possibility. What if things just exist and change? And it's a very weird thought, because if they just exist and change, you start thinking, you just think that's really weird. That means that it's always only ever just been now. There's a guy called Alan Watts, a philosopher, said that, but he said, imagine when you die that you fall into a sleep that you never wake up from. It's a very hard thing to imagine. But imagine waking up from a sleep that you never went into. That seems harder to imagine, but it is what you've done.